everyone, my name is Evie Lupine. Welcome back to my channel, and today I have another video for you all. Today I wanted to share more with you guys about my experience at Kinkfest 2019. I've been going to Kinkfest, which is an annual BDSM convention held in Portland, Oregon for several years now. This is actually my third Kinkfest, and after every time that I've gone, I have made videos talking about my experience and what I learned and what I took away from the convention. So if you'd like to see those previous videos, or if you want to see some of my other more general videos about BDSM conventions or other things related to Kinkfest, you can do so checking out the videos down in the description box below. And I could format this as a review video. I could give you guys a complete overview of everything about Kinkfest, which is what I did the first year that I went. But the core structure of it hasn't really changed that much. And if I wanted to go through and review every single class that I went to in detail, this video would probably be almost an hour. So rather than doing that, I want to talk about what are the core things that I learned about myself, about BDSM, about my relationship that came out during the experience of going to Kinkfest. Because while it is nice to be able to have an entire notebook full of tons of great ideas and suggestions of so many different classes from so many different presenters, I find that really what affects me in my everyday relationship, in my everyday experience of being a BDSM person, is not the 20 pages of this notebook that I filled out while I was there, but rather the really just little snippets that for whatever reason really just grabbed me when I was going to these classes. And I think that's probably the same for a lot of people. When we're going to school, when we're in college, we maybe don't remember, all of every single class that we took for the entire 4 years, but we do hang on to these occasional little snippets that really spoke to us for whatever reason throughout the time we were there. And this year at Kinkfest, there were a lot of things that were just different. So the previous 2 years that I had gone, it had really just been me and Mr. Tex. We'd kind of been doing our own thing. We had our own hotel room. We definitely had friends that were going, but they kind of also sort of did their own thing, and we would meet up with each other periodically. But this year, rather than doing that, it was kind of a whole sort of family affair, if you will. There were tons of people there from our TNG group. We had like 5 people in our carpool. We had so many people who were with us that had never been to Kinkfest before, which was fantastic, but there was a lot more emotional labor that went along with having that many people around you all the time. We were also sharing our hotel room, meaning me and Mr. Tex's hotel room, with a third person who's one of Mr. Tex's other partners, and that hadn't happened before. So in addition to having like my entire freaking friend group being with me the entire time we were there, I was also kind of dealing with having a first-time experience with an open relationship where I was sharing space constantly with another partner for several days at a time, which I hadn't really done before. And this video is not going to be like a polyamory or open relationship guide or advice thing, because frankly, I don't really feel qualified to do that. But suffice to say that it was something that impacted my experience. And what I learned really from this, if I could kind of summarize it at all, is that people do make an experience a lot richer, but it is still important to take time for yourself, especially when you are going to a convention that has like dozens of people at minimum at any given time around you, and then you're going back and you're going out for group dinners and you're sharing this teeny weeny hotel room with 2 other people, and you're all trying to kind of also do your own thing, but you have to coordinate, who's taking the car and who's taking the shuttle. And it's really important to just remember, even though people are wonderful and lovely, you don't have to be around them 24/7, and it's okay to take time for yourself. And I luckily was in a hotel that had a fitness area that was really, really close, like literally 10 steps away from my door. So I could take time to use the hot tub or do yoga, kind of having almost like built-in self-care into the experience rather than waiting for a time later on after the convention was done to make sure that happened. Now, I'm definitely still dealing with drop. I am definitely still tired, and having 5.5 hours of sleep on average for 3 nights in a row was probably not the best thing that I could do in terms of self-care, but I could at least also make time for myself in other ways where I didn't feel guilty being separate from other people. I didn't feel guilty for maybe missing a class or doing lunch by myself or staying up a little bit later than other people in order to make time for that. And so I guess if you guys want to take your own little piece of advice from that experience, it would be to make sure when you are going to conventions to build in time to have those moments of self-care, have time to relax and unwind by yourself, particularly if you're introverted or shy. There are also oftentimes quiet spaces at conventions where you can just go and not make eye contact, not say anything to anybody, just have kind of a little moment to recuperate. Don't plan on going flat out. Don't plan on just going to every single class every single day and being at the dungeon from 8 p.m. until 2 a.m. every single night, because you will eventually wear yourself out and that will affect your overall experience. Now, in terms of the classes for this year, they were all over the map. I went to everything from like scene composition to a trampoline class. Like, it was a great variety of classes, but in particular, the ones that really spoke to me this year were the ones by Melena Williams, who I actually interviewed earlier. So if you want to, be sure to check out the interview because it was fantastic, and definitely include some things that I learned also in repetition from the classes that she did at Kinkfest. The first one was a class about taboo play, which was fantastic, and especially because it was the Saturday morning earliest or second earliest class block. People were tired and they maybe weren't necessarily as energetic as they were on Friday. And she was able to really keep everybody engaged. Even though it was definitely a heavier topic, she kept things light and people were laughing, and it just flowed so wonderfully, and it was a great experience to have, especially after all of the events of Friday night and having to drag yourself out of bed at 8 a.m. on Saturday to be able to get ready to take classes. But the really big thing that I took away from Melena Williams was something that she actually said on her class on Sunday, which was a class called Hiring, Finding, and Vetting the Right Dominant for You, or something along those lines. I'm probably butchering the title. And this class, I found very interestingly, was one that wasn't necessarily something with a set structure. There wasn't a PowerPoint, there wasn't a handout, there wasn't any kind of direct guide. And I found out throughout this experience that her style is not one where it's like super organized, like bullet points, we're going to talk about this and this and this and this, but rather something where she kind of almost like takes the energy from the room and figures out what people want to learn about and then tailors the conversation around those specific questions and those specific needs, and kind of almost keeps the presentation a lot more present with the people who are in the room. And though I do have a partner, I am always very interested in getting more advice for things like vetting and for finding partners. And so if you do want to be able to take this class on your own and you do see it available at some point, I do recommend you give yourself the opportunity to do that. But there was one particular phrase that she said in regards to kind of figuring out whether or not a relationship will work for you. And she had first outlined something that a partner had given her when she was kind of first starting out into power exchange, and that was come up with a list of needs, wants, and desires, and hold yourself to them. Figure out what you actually want, need, and desire before you get into a situation where you're actually actively seeking somebody, so you know for yourself, without anybody else's influence and input, what you really want. And the next step that she took after that was this, again, I'm like, I don't mean to be building up to it so much, but this really like succinct but like amazingly profound thing, and maybe this won't connect with you in the same way, but it was find a key that fits your lock rather than rekeying your whole house to fit a specific key. And what that kind of means is like, find the person, find the DS, find the BDSM that works with you as who you are authentically, rather than pretending to be something you're not or changing yourself to fit somebody else's mold. And I think maybe saying it that way is a little bit cliche or overdone, but I think in particular just the visualization, the idea of being who you are authentically and finding somebody who can accept that versus making yourself fold into like pretzels to try and fit what somebody else needs for you to be. Because even though you can get away with doing that for maybe a couple of weeks or a couple of months or a couple of years, you either lose your authentic self or the authentic self has to come out at some point, and then the relationship is eventually not going to work out. So it's really important to be honest about where you're at and where your compatibility is at. And I know it's something that happens like all the time, be it somebody who's naturally a bottom, trying to force themselves to be a slave, to be with a particular person in an MS relationship, or somebody who's a switch, forcing themselves into a monogamous relationship where they can only be a dominant. There are lots of situations in BDSM where I have seen people, or what I have even done to myself, gone into relationships that really don't necessarily work for our whole authentic selves in order to be with a specific person. And people are wonderful. People are great. I love my partner. Most people, have some kind of reason why they're in a relationship with a particular person. But she also did really mention, the one thing that you can never, ever get back is time. And where I am not necessarily somebody who lives with regret, even my relationships that have ended badly, I don't regret them because they help me become the person that I am today, that allows me to do the things that I'm doing currently right now and that I will be able to do in the future. If something is really not working, it doesn't mean you need to hold on to it for forever and just hoping that this person is suddenly magically going to be able to do this thing, or they're suddenly going to magically understand my desires or respect my sexuality or allow me to have an open relationship or whatever it is. You can't just hold out on hope for forever. Eventually you have to come to a point where you decide either we're going to work on this mutually together because we want this relationship, or the best way to serve the people in the relationship is to split up. Because I think I've mentioned this before maybe in other videos, but the purpose of the relationship should not be to sustain the relationship. It should be built to sustain the people in the relationship. And if your relationship is no longer doing that, you either should have a conversation, and if that conversation doesn't work out, then you should move on to potentially thinking about, do you need to renegotiate what our type of relationship is, or should we still be seeing each other, or should we still be friends, and all of that good stuff. And I don't want anybody to ever feel like they are obligated to stay in something that's no longer serving them, and that is actually maybe even making them miserable or preventing them from having the kinds of experience that they want to have. Really, really, truly, embrace the authentic self. And this is something that actually came up not just in this class, but in multiple other classes as well, which is probably why I'm talking about it so much, is we are kinky, we are freaky people, we are weird by the outside, by the default world, by normie culture. We are the freaks. And this is the one space maybe that most of us have in life to be our truest selves. And if we can't be that with ourselves fully, if we can't be that with our partners, if we can't be like that out in our community, what are we doing? Maybe for some people it does make sense to kind of, rather than having the big whole reveal, maybe only have half of all of yourself revealed at one time. But if you can't necessarily share that with a partner, if you can't be upfront and say, here's what my needs are, here's what my wants are, here's what my desires are, here are the things that are the absolute minimum to have to make a relationship or a scene or a whatever successful for me with you. You just have to learn how to be completely honest about what those things are, as opposed to going, I think I can maybe deal with this, or maybe I'll hope that they'll change, or maybe I'll hope that I can change. And maybe you can, but maybe you can't. And yeah, I think that was really what I took away from Kinkfest this year. The big giant bullet point that I think will really inform my decisions, how I think about relationships, but then will also definitely help me verbalize to you guys a lot of times some of the issues that you're having, which is to remember, again, that you need to find a key that fits your lock, not change all the locks in your house to fit a specific key, because you are that house, by the way. If you're wondering that analogy, you are the house. You don't need to change who you are to fit a particular person, be that in the vanilla world or in the kink world. Compromise is amazing, but there are certain core things about yourself that maybe you shouldn't be compromising, because otherwise you're going to lose who you truly are. Anyways, Kinkfest this year was a wonderful experience. It was definitely emotionally challenging, physically challenging. I did pickup play at Kinkfest with people who I didn't know before, which was something that I had never really tried, and it was mixed levels of success. I did scenes that I'd never done before. I was with people that I hadn't really been around before. I definitely planned on doing a lot more things than I did in other Kinkfests, and yeah, it was an overall like really good positive experience. I definitely grew a lot in my relationship, feeling secure in my relationship, feeling more secure being in an open relationship style in particular, learning more about how I deal with like negative emotions or stress and how to deal with that maybe when I'm outside of my like natural home environment, because I can deal with things when I'm at home, and I can sleep in my own bed, or I can take a shower in my own shower with my own whatever, with my own lotion or whatever it happens to be. But when you're away from home and having to deal with that, like how do you do it? And that's something that I really, really learned this year. And like I mentioned, all of the classes were so amazing. And I learned, again, not only this kind of like effervescent like things about myself, but also like hard skills, like how to trample somebody or how to compose a scene, or more things about high protocol that maybe I didn't know before. And yeah, I would definitely recommend Kinkfest. If you're ever thinking about going, please be sure to check out some of my other videos that I've done talking about Kinkfest. If you would like some more information, any other comments or questions for me, please be sure to leave that down in the description box below. And if you really enjoyed this video, if you want to help support my channel, the best place you can do that is over on Patreon. That gives you access to extra videos, Discord, FetLife, and extra live streams, all sorts of amazing things, photo shoots, and I would recommend you check that out. Link will be down in the description box below. And if you already support me on there, thank you so much. It means the absolute world to me. And until I see you guys next time, hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week.